What is up, everybody? Baseball fans and Mets fans collective. We are back. Welcome back to What Do You Say, the exclusive channel for all things New York Mets. And if you can't tell, we have a very special guest here for the video, the first collab video on the channel. Very excited about it. There are more to come. I promised you guys he'd be here. The entertainer in the flesh. How are we doing?
I'm excited, man. I'm excited to start this channel up, and obviously we're gonna have a lot more content as it, progresses. And come March 1st, that's probably when training will get into it, and I'll be on here a lot more, especially as the season gets underway. Can't wait to grow this channel with you, buddy. You're a great Met fan, and we got a lot to talk about. I mean, obviously there's been some other things you've been talking about. You've been doing a great job with the videos, and just found out that a longtime Met from Long Island, where I'm from, came up with the team in 2015, year they went to the World Series, and got off to a great start then. And really, ever since then, he kind of spiraled out of control. Was never a big fan of Steven Matz, but Mets decide to move on from the lefty.
Yeah, so I was always a big fan of Steven Matz's elbow guard and his hitting, but we can't get any of that anymore. Actually, we would have got it because the DH isn't to stay in the NL anymore. So the pitchers will rake again, which is going to be nice for Mets fans out there because we know we like ourselves some DeGrom at the plate. But you're right, Matz is gone. I think another heartbreaking moment for Mets fans is seeing that big picture of, Harvey, Wheeler, Syndergaard, Matz, Cologne, and all the X's. It's really just Syndergaard and DeGrom left from that pitching rotation. This is pretty much a new regime now, but Matz was kind of in no man's land. People who follow the channel know after the Lucchesi signing, we had two lefties on the back end there fighting for that fifth spot. Then we have a third lefty in Peterson who's kind of solidified himself in that fourth spot. I know he only had one season, but I feel very confident in him, and I know you do too. Yeah. So he was kind of the odd man out. One of them would have been, I thought he might fall in the rotation, but they ended up moving him. But entertainer, this is more for me, and we could talk about the prospects. The Mets ended up getting 3 prospects out of this, but this has got to be a money move. They say $5 million on this. Do you see this more big picture? I mean, the prospects is great and rebuilding it is great, but is this more big picture for you?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what it was. We kind of talked about that on Twitter, and I think it's money, like you just said. I think it's to free up some money to potentially go after a guy like Trevor Bauer. And if it's not Bauer, maybe to make, a couple of small moves. Maybe bring in a guy like Jackie Bradley Jr., continue to beef up that bullpen. They made a move today. But I'm with you, man. I'm a big fan of Peterson. And I think, like you just said, when they made the move to bring in Lucchesi, it kind of, filled out the rotation and it made Matz expendable. And I never thought he was going to be here long term. By doing this, you save $5 million. And maybe it gives you a little bit more wiggle room, like you said, to go after Trevor Bauer. Word is that the Mets already gave him an offer. Obviously, there were conflicting reports there. Initially, they said that it was a record-breaking offer in terms of, per year average. And then they kind of scaled that back and said it wasn't. But they did give him an official offer as we're waiting on that. And I've kind of been disappointed with the Mets offseason. After the fact that we made the trade that we did, which was great. I was expecting a little bit more. But if you go out there and you get Trevor Bauer, I think every Met fan is going to have a big smile on their face come March.
And I think that's where they're at. And I like your mindset because a lot of the guys, especially in the comments here, we're going to drink, we're going to drink this slowly. We want Bauer, but we've played this game with Springer before. We've been the favorite with Hand as well. And we've kind of had our hearts broken on that, leading to the disappointment. Obviously, there's other news. Real quick to touch on it, Zach Scott also got brought up to the GM role there. So that's nice for the Mets. He's someone they brought him. He was the assistant GM. So that was very minor to touch on. So there were some other things going on, but obviously the Porter news. So there's been a whirlwind of things going on for the Mets. But they do bring in 3 young arms here, all right-handed pitchers, only one of them with major league experience. And I believe that'll be Sean Reed Foley. All of them obviously from the Blue Jays organization. Foley pitched in a handful of games last year. His total MLB record is 5-8. He has a 4.4 ERA last year in the short season, 5 games played, a 1.35 ERA, and the 1 win. The other 2 will be bottom barrel prospects out of the top 30 on the Blue Jays. I think they're in the bottom 20. So nothing sexy, nothing extravagant there. But in rebuilding the farm system. But when we talk about this being a money move, freeing up $5 million, they were already under the cap around $30 million or so. The deal I heard for Bauer is going to have to be over the $35 million mark, is where this deal will also get us, which is great. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is.
It's a lot of money. Yeah. Maybe not record breaking, but it's pretty damn high, especially when you consider we got a guy like Jacob deGrom who till my dying day, I'll say he should have won another Cy Young last year over Bauer and is making a fraction of that almost. Still one of the most team-friendly, unreal deals I've seen and been a part of. So, you bring a guy in like Bauer, and this is what I guess I'll ask you. Is that enough? Because that'll pretty much milk us dry. Obviously, we want a guy like Bradley. We need to fix the outfield, but we're gonna bleed this dry. I mean, we can go over the cap, but is Bauer enough for you to kind of make up for the losses that we've had so far?
Listen, you get Trevor Bauer, and I'm not saying Trevor Bauer last year had an unreal year, and I would not expect him. And granted, it was in a limited sample size, 1/3 of the normal starts that you would have. And I completely agree that we definitely still need to bring in a defensive center fielder. I am not sold with Brandon Nimmo patrolling center field next year, so I am hoping even if they bring in a guy like Bauer, even if it's a cheap guy, somebody with a glove that could go out there and play the position defensively because we need it. But you bring in a guy like Bauer. I mean, you look at this rotation. If you bring him in, and again, I don't expect him to pitch to a 1.73 ERA, career 3.90 ERA. 2018, he was marvelous. He was 12-6 with a 2.21 and 28 starts. If you get if he pitches in the high 2s, low 3s, and you add him to this rotation, and Syndergaard comes back, within a month or two, you're looking at a rotation of DeGrom, Bauer, Syndergaard, Carrasco, and Stroman at the end. Stroman was a guy when we first brought him in, we were looking at him as being like a number 2 or 3 starter. He'd be the number 5. I mean, the Mets rotation would be absolutely loaded. Obviously, the bullpen is still a question mark. And you got to hope some of those guys pitch to the back of their baseball card. Some of the guys we brought in the past, guys like Edwin Diaz. But I think most Met fans would be ecstatic if you end the season getting the best shortstop in baseball and the best starting pitcher on the open market to pair with Jacob deGrom at the top. I mean, that's deadly. And then at the trade deadline, if you need to make some moves, fill out the rest of that bullpen. You do what you got to do. We got to remember that as Met fans, there's still going to be moves to be made from within season.
So speaking of the bullpen, obviously we also added Aaron Loop. He's a left-handed pitcher out of the Rays, out of Tampa. So that was a nice little minor move. Obviously not the Brad Hand we wanted, but something to address the fact and the need of a left-handed pitcher out of our bullpen. Adding Bauer, to me, I think it scares people mainly because of how outspoken he is and him being in New York and the whole idea of him launching a baseball into center field. And I just want to get this out there. If he does launch a baseball into center field this season, if he joins the Mets, I would prefer he aim for the Big Apple and hit it directly in it. So this way we have some really good content to talk about. I don't want him to go wide left or wide right. So, aim for the apple, get it in there. I'm for it. We'll talk about it later. But I think it's his attitude. I think that's what people are worried about. He's very outspoken. And I will say this. I'm interested to see because we already kind of have an outspoken pitcher on this team in Stroman. And he's not necessarily rubbed me the right way. And from the comments of the people at the channel, he hasn't necessarily rubbed them the right way either. And it's mainly because he hasn't been available for the Mets, hasn't exactly pitched the best, and talks the talk, but kind of let us down last year and didn't really walk the walk. So for me, with Bauer, I have no issue. Just play his game. You know what I mean? Let's get our money's worth, and we're going to pay him $35 million.
It's kind of like Harvey. When Harvey, Stroman last year obviously sat out due to the virus, whatever. But with Harvey was like, we didn't care as Met fans. We were like, yeah, this is great when he was pitching great. But when you do that and you don't perform, you're going to hear about it. Especially in New York, it comes with the territory. But he was like a hero to us, the Dark Knight, Matt Harvey. Even when he was a jerk, people got behind him. He was the leader of this baseball team. As long as you perform, I don't care as a Met fan. You look at some of the greatest Mets of all time, Darryl Strawberry, Doc Gooden. They weren't, we're Met Giant fans rather. Lawrence Taylor. These guys aren't role models. But if you perform, you help the team win. In the end, the Mets fans are still going to look at them like heroes.
We already got a role model on this team on the pitching staff. It's Jacob deGrom. Nothing else needs to be touched. He is our promised child. He's all we need. Then we got a superhero in Thor coming out, and then we can add some spark to this team because honestly, we're almost too likable. I think the Mets are too lovable. We need a little hate. I think Bauer would bring that hate. Some other ideas I had, and I talked about it, other free agents. If we didn't get Bauer, there are some other arms out there. A guy I talked about in Odorizzi. There are also some other guys like Ozuna that could address us in left field. Another outfield bat. He's not necessarily the glove, but if we're going to keep Nimmo in center, these guys are costly. I mean, Ozuna had a 1-year, $18 million deal last year. You're looking at Odorizzi. His contract can fluctuate. He had a down year last year, so I think I'd be interested to see where that kind of ballparks. But really, you add those together, and those are probably equal a little over 30 million anyways. So there is some room that if we don't get Bauer, there's some other moves to make. So I do view this Steven Matz deal as more of, let's shore up this pitching rotation. Let's get some money in our pocket. And all at the same time, this is what we've heard Sandy say and Porter while he was here, but I'm sure Scott would say the same thing. It's that we needed to strengthen our farm system. And these are 3 right-handed arms that is to be seen, but they're making the right moves, and they are kind of doing what they said, even though we didn't hit the big targets in Springer and Hand, of course.
Yeah, and we got to wait to see how the rest of the offseason plays out. I'm sure they're going to spend that money that they saved from the Steven Matz deal, and they're going to bring somebody in, whether it's a big fish or whether, like you said, it's 2 or 3 guys that kind of fill in the rest of the roster. Because we know we've got holes. I mean, we definitely could add a couple of arms to that pen. We could definitely add a defensive center fielder. So we'll see how it all plays out. Obviously, most Met fans are hoping for the big fish, that being Bauer. But at the end of the day, as long as you help improve this team, you get this team going in the right direction, I think we're definitely going to be a better team next year. It's just a matter of, are we going to be good enough? You look at a lot of teams in the National League, they're stacked. You get a guy like Bauer, I think it would legitimately give Met fans the hope that this team could compete for a World Series going into next season. So we'll see. Things will get very exciting in Metland if we end up with Trevor Bauer. But as far as the guy to the bullpen today, I don't know a ton about him. Other than he's got a weird name, but he had a good ERA last year in a limited sample size. We needed a lefty. So I'm happy that we brought him in. He seemed like a step down from Hand, but something that we desperately needed. We continue to fill out that bullpen.
It also means we probably won't be bringing back Justin Wilson. A lot of people wanted to bring him back as well. I'm not sure if that's going to run fully dry. Another thing to think about is that lefty, specialist doesn't really exist in the pros anymore. You got to go 3 innings or three batters in an inning now. So it does change a lot. So maybe that's why we're very right-handed heavy, because it doesn't really matter. Honestly, if we had Bauer, if we had Odorizzi, whoever we decide to do, I still think the key to this team comes out of that bullpen and what Edwin Diaz decides to do for this team, because you can get 7 innings, and we've seen this with DeGrom time in, time out. You can pitch a gem, a 2-0 gem. You can't get out of the 8th and 9th. What's the point? What is the point? So the bullpen is still a need, but adding Loop, and he spells his name L-O-U-P. That's why he has a weird name. I don't know why anyone would call themselves Loop and not just add the second O, but it helps. But we also need big performances out of Diaz, who avoided arbitration this year. I think this is his make it or break it year. We got a guy in Betances who's still on this roster that we expected a lot out of last year and didn't get too much out of. But then we got our guys in Lugo, who I trust. And before we got on air, we had talked about if Lugo could fight for that 5th spot too, but we need him in the pen. If you didn't get that from my voice, we need him in the pen. I would ideally want him to be our closer, but he's kind of a Swiss Army knife. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We will see.
And the other thing I'll say real quick that I'm really excited about that I think is going to help us win more games than last year, I think we have an improved defense, especially at the positions that matter. Lindor at the shortstop spot is going to win us a couple of extra games with his glove alone. And I think McCann is definitely going to help in the defensive department as well. So that alone was a huge improvement for this team, but we need to add that defensive center field. I still think we need that. And we'll see how the rest of the offseason plays out, man. But I want to say, I had a blast talking Mets and looking forward to doing it more in the future.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and letting all the people know you were a man of your word when you talked to me and said you'd be making appearances. I say it every clip, every video. I'm like, the entertainer's coming on. Like, I promise you guys, he's coming on. I don't know where he is, but he'll be here, and he's here. He's here. Third base. We also need to address third base. JD's defense isn't great, but entertainer, I've had a blast talking Mets. Guys, be sure you like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification button. Do
Same
everything
thing you do on my
can.
channel, guys. Hit the comments, hit the likes, hit the subscribe, ring the bell.
Do it all. Let me know. Let us know if there's anything we missed, any other free agents you guys want on this team. If we sign Bauer, light up these comments with just Bauer and let me know how excited you are. And if you want him to hit that Big Apple in center field, also let me know that, because that's what I'll personally be looking forward to. But entertainer, thanks for coming on. Guys, this has been a blast. Be on the lookout for our next video at the beginning of next week, hopefully with some good news. But talk to you guys soon. Let's go Mets.